With so much harmful speech in support of transphobic stereotypes and assumptions being the social norm, discrimination is continuing to worsen and spread to new generations. Oxford Dictionary describes transphobia as a strong prejudice or an unreasonable dislike against transsexual or transgender people. Webster describes it as an irrational fear of, aversion to, or discrimination against transgender people. Webster Dictionary defines transgender as of relating to or being a person whose gender identity differs from the sex the person had or was identified as having at birth. Oxford describes it as describing or relating to the people whose sense of gender identity does not match their biological sex or does not easily fit in with the usual division between male and female. Transphobia is not usually expressed as a cognitive fear of transgender people, but presents itself in more subtle speech and seemingly harmless repetition of certain phrases or ideas, usually between cisgender individuals and in some cases from a cisgender person directly to a transgender person.
Cisgender people may not intend to do harm by spreading misinformation, but today's young people are absorbing everything that they hear. Without admitting it, they are looking up to older cisgender people and looking to them for answers and how to view the world. The transgender community is still a mystery to many people. It's not commonly talked about in a positive light. Other than transgender people becoming more visible, more comfortable standing up for themselves, there is still a lot of negativity and fear of the unknown surrounding the trans community. So young people are looking up to older Psi people for answers and for guidance or for some kind of guide on how to mold their own moral attitudes surrounding the transgender community. And they're going to repeat what they hear.
Other times, the transphobia is expressed more hatefully and with full cognition by the person expressing it. They know exactly what they are saying and that they are meaning to do harm with what they are saying, and they don't care. It is their attitude. This leads to more acceptance of hate crimes and increasing violence against trans people, including the highest murder rate against trans people that has ever been reported as of 2020.
It is known in social psychology that the more visible a minority group becomes and the more frustrated the regular group becomes or the in-group becomes, the more likely you are to have hate or anger expressed to that minority. And it's no secret that 2020 was the most frustrating and confusing year for the majority of people. So people already have this underlying tension. They already have this tension about race and illness and politics and everything that was going on last year. So combine that with trans visibility. It takes a minority group becoming visible and to have the majority being frustrated to have this lethal combination. So it's really no surprise, but it's absolutely a tragedy that we had to lose lives due to these circumstances. But knowing that, it does give me personal hope that that is a temporary problem. And if we continue on this road with trans visibility, maybe that fear will dissipate a little bit.
Everything we learned about gender is indoctrinated by what has been widely accepted. In today's society, people are realizing their right to be open about their differences. We need people to change the way we think about gender in the first place, but first they need to be open to learning what that means. We were already told, but we must have forgotten since then. Think back to 9th grade biology class. We were taught that there are actually 16 plus variations of sex chromosomes, not 2. XX and XY are not the only combinations, they are only the most common combinations. Parents predetermine gender at birth based off of their physical sex. And how can parents determine gender when it's a social construct and the baby isn't even self-aware yet?
Self-awareness doesn't start until about 18 months, and even then, it can be reduced to recognizing themselves in a mirror, recognizing that they have eyes and that they have a nose. They still aren't fully aware of the social construct of gender, or that they are a boy or that they are a girl, unless they are told. They have to be told to fit into these certain roles as they're growing.
Sometimes the parents get it wrong, and how could they know any different? They're just doing what doctors are telling them to do. So many people view the transgender community as so minute and such a small population that they don't need to worry about their needs as a whole, and they talk about them as if they don't exist. So think about this statistic next time you see a redhead. About 1.5 million American adults identify as transgender or non-binary. And equally, about 1.5 million Americans are born with red hair. So every time you see a natural redhead, remember that there is a transgender person in the world as well. And while we're on that subject, I should mention that 1 in 1,000 babies are born intersex. 1 in 1,000 babies are born with ambiguous genitalia. That might not seem like a lot, but that means 4,266,600 Americans were born intersex. Their parents were required to determine their gender before they could even leave the hospital. And some evidence implies that there is a genetic link to being transgender with being born intersex. I'm not saying that all of these people are going to be transgender, and I'm not saying that all transgender people were born intersex, but there are studies showing that there could be a link. Trans people are constantly dehumanized by transphobic speech. This speech still hurts the community, it still hurts these individuals, and it absolutely exists. And I'm sure that you have heard people say this, and if you have said these things yourself, I would hope that after this, you think twice about it. Here are some phrases that are considered transphobic or harmful to the transgender community. There is so much science to back up the fact that gender is not binary that it just blows my mind people are saying the same phrases over and over about there only being 2 genders. Brain scans are showing that gender is a choice. They're proving that brain activity aligns with the gender a person identifies with rather than their assigned birth gender. Many people will try to say that trans people are just mentally ill. And this is based solely off the fact that the person saying it can't understand why somebody would be transgender, because they're not. So there is this phrase, gender dysphoria, that's being thrown around and called a mental illness. And people are saying that all trans people are just gender dysphoric and that it's a mental diagnosis. But no, that is not true. Dysphoria is actually a symptom, not a condition. And the symptom is created by a lack of acceptance and repression. It does not cause trans behavior. In fact, it is caused by not being accepted as trans. So often transitioning is a solution to dysphoria. Dysphoria is not experienced by all transgender people either. So how could trans people just be mentally ill when not everybody experiences dysphoria?
Opponents don't understand that transgender people are just people. I'm just a 17-year-old who likes video games and going out with his friends and riding my bike and playing with my animals. There's nothing particularly extraordinary or dangerous about me. After a period of time, a community member had raised issue and it was put to public discussion in a school board meeting. I felt very small in there because I knew that the majority of individuals who were in there were not very positive towards me. People tend to view the unisex bathrooms that were created as an accommodation, but they were not. I didn't ask for unisex bathrooms. I'm not unisex. And that's a separate facility which only I am forced to be using, which is unacceptable. When school starts again, I'm not going to be able to use the boys' room, which is disappointing. I'm not a freak. My very existence is not a perversion. I'm just a person who's trying to live his life like anybody else is, and that I have to think about my bathroom usage is unacceptable.
How awkward would it be if a stranger just began talking about your genitals as if you're not a person?
Iowa Senate Republicans advancing a bill today that would require schools to only allow bathroom use based on a person's assigned sex at birth. GOP Senator Jim Carlin of Sioux City, who sponsors the bill, says it's not fair to other students who might feel uncomfortable in a restroom or locker room with someone of the opposite sex who identifies as trans. However, several LGBTQ advocates speaking in opposition, saying the language is hateful in the bill and singles out these transgender students.
Bathroom bills send the dangerous message that transgender students shouldn't be respected, the same message that leads to bullying.
This bill was advanced and is now eligible for a full Senate Education Committee vote to take.
I can't even count how many times I've heard people relate transgender people to sexual predators. They think that if a transgender person is going to use the same bathroom as their children, that their children are going to be shocked, confused, or hurt in some way.
Treating going to the bathroom like some kind of sexual experience, and it's definitely not. It's exactly what it sounds like, and as a transgender person, I can definitely say that going into the bathroom, like when I first started going into the men's bathroom, it's a terrifying experience, because from stories, you don't know if you're going to be assaulted or attacked or somebody's going to call you out or anything like that. So no transgender person is thinking about doing anything perverted when we're trying to keep our eyes down and just like do what we came in there to do and get out.
It is actually very dangerous for a transgender person to use a bathroom opposite of what they look like, being forced to use the bathroom they're not comfortable with. Trans people are already at such great risk of hate crimes, and then put them into such a personal space such as a restroom where people could get very upset if someone that looks like a woman walks into a men's bathroom and those people happen to be transphobic, and will act on their urges to discriminate, sometimes by physical assault, sometimes sexual assault. It's not uncommon. Imagine living your life being afraid to use the bathroom because people don't see you as human.
People would argue that parents should not be allowing their children to be trans. The problem is that the child is already non-binary. They're experiencing discomfort for being forced into a gender role for so long that is not suiting them. They just want to be accepted for who they already are. And you're telling parents to tell their children that they are not accepted even by them.
Identity in the classroom is getting a lot of attention tonight in the Iowa legislature.
KCAU 9 News reporter Lydia Vasquez explaining why a local lawmaker tonight is in favor of the bill, as well as the negative impact some LGBTQ advocates say it could have, in our top story at 6.
At the center of debate over Iowa Senate File 80 is what school personnel should be required to tell parents. If a student identifies by a pronoun different than their biological sex, such as him, her, they, and them, schools would be required to notify parents of that identification. Specifically, here's what Senate File 80 states. If a student in a school district will be asked by a school employee to identify the pronoun by which the student prefers to be called, or will be asked to take a survey on pronoun preference, the school district shall provide written notification of such action to the parent or guardian of the student. Senator Jim Carlin of Sioux City represents Iowa's 3rd District. He says parents have a right to participate in such decisions.
They should play an active role in defining a child's self-image, the way a child sees the world. Their role is indispensable, in my mind, to that child's success. The idea that you leave parents out of that conversation is just not something I would ever be able to get on board with.
The bill, however, is sounding an alarm for LGBTQ advocates. The co-founder of Siouxland Pride Alliance tells us in a statement, the bill is basically forcing children to out themselves to their school and parents as the information is sent to the parents. It is a safety issue since so many youth are assaulted by their parents when they come out and then kicked out of the house. John Dew says when and who people disclose their sexual orientation or gender identity to is their business and should only happen when they choose to do so. Senator Carlin says he's optimistic the bill will make it out of the Senate. In Sioux City.
Carlin says that the primary purpose of the bill is to protect women and little girls. I'll just flat out tell you that, Carlin told the Daily Iowan. I think the interests of privacy and safety of women and girls should be given priority. It's not an anti-transgender bill. What it is there are men, and this has been shown to be true, that prey upon women and girls in that set of circumstances.
I would argue with trans people being such a minority that I'm sure there are much less statistical sexual predators than there would be psi people entering the public bathroom with your children.
Carlin said that he has spoke to and represented women who were assaulted in bathrooms by men, though in those cases he said the perpetrators were not presenting themselves as transgender women. Carlin did not give any real-world examples of people who were assaulted in bathrooms by transgender individuals. Carlin said in a February 10th subcommittee meeting that he didn't feel there was enough conversation from the public about the privacy and safety of cisgender women. But bill detractors point out that the transgender people are more likely to experience violence when denied access to the rest of their gender identity, according to the Daily Iowan.